You're listening to Henry's Potpourri A Plenty, the podcast that explores a grab bag of items from the life of one of history's greatest underachievers. On this week's segment, he discusses the impetus for the podcast, his recent foray into rock history, Star Wars Day, and more. Join for a good time. Stay for the full time.
And good evening, inaugural listeners. Thank you for text-to-speech, Samantha, for introducing me on this first foray into podcasting. And thanks to Mishiru Yamane and the wonderful people at the Castlevania sound team for the fantastic Marble Gallery soundtrack on Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I couldn't think of a better song to sort of welcome listeners into what makes me me and what makes this podcast unique. So today is going to be kind of an interesting experience because I've never done a podcast before. I don't know if I'll be good at it at all, but for a school assignment and for a final project especially, you couldn't ask for sort of a more enjoyable task. I think everyone's dreamed of being a radio personality at some point in their lives. I grew up in the era of Howard Stern, my parents having listened to him all through the 2000s, on Sirius XM, and kind of having that distinctive personality and quick wit to really entertain people. It almost seems like a dream job, and then you get into it and you realize it's really a lot of work and it's very difficult. It's difficult to find talking points. It's difficult to establish your own personality. Heck, for someone like me, it's even difficult to really put myself out there and be a great public speaker. I struggle. I stammer. I hesitate. I'm doing it right now, right? So it's a different experience for me, but hopefully by at least trying this little experiment, I'll be perhaps taking that first step towards, who knows what it leads into, whether this is just a one-off, whether this becomes, a career path for me. I don't know. But anyways, it's the evening of May 4th. Kind of an eventful week and weekend in general. You have graduation for the University of Michigan students, which I've been very privy to. I work at the School of Dentistry downtown here, so it's been an interesting situation where a lot of the D4 students, that is fourth year dental students, are going to be moving on, and their graduation will be occurring on May 9th. And it's going to be, kind of an interesting situation. I always compare it to what it must be like as a teacher, where you have all these students come in year after year and you sort of grow attached to them in some way. And by the time they're ready to graduate, you're sad to see them go. You don't want to let go. And I'm not even in such a capacity where I can call myself their teacher or their role model, and yet I still feel that way. I don't want to see them move on. So it's been bittersweet, but just seeing all the students downtown in their dressing gowns and their caps, and their families, people of all different generations gathered to see their grandson, granddaughter, whomever it may be, take that next big leap in life has been, it's been wonderful. And to the class of 2025, here, there, and everywhere, wherever you are in the country or wherever you are in the world, we wish you all the best of luck, and to, aim high in your endeavors and never lose track of what makes yourself unique, and just have the best of luck. So there's been that. It's kind of been an interesting week because with the lack of students, this is sort of a break period between semesters. I've been at work, just sort of doing odds and ends type of business, right? A lot of cleaning, a lot of stocking. Um, it's been interesting. I've had a lot of extra time, and with that extra time, I've been really getting into a lot of music that I had never dreamed of, getting into. This past 6 months or so, I've really been getting into classic rock. I sort of owe it all to A Complete Unknown, that Bob Dylan biopic with Timothy Chalamet, for really getting the ball rolling on that. And it's been wonderful to experience all of the classic bands. You got your Beatles, your Rolling Stones, your Queen, what have you, right? But this past week, I had a unique experience, for me at least, because I actually listened to the entirety of a classic rock album. And we sort of don't live in an era of the full album anymore, with YouTube, with streaming. Spotify especially has made it so that we kind of jump from song to song, from artist to artist, can curate things any way we want, have different artists mixed in together. But I got the opportunity to listen to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon for the first time. Certainly for the first time in full. I've been aware of, some of the songs from the album. Certainly Money was familiar. Certainly On the Run was familiar. That was a song that was used by my Chicago Bulls at one point during opposing player introductions. But to listen to the full album, and sort of with the degree to which it's revered, for someone like me, you tend to think, okay, maybe is there a chance that this is something that has been, it's a case of maybe inflated expectations going in. You're like, well, there's no way it can be as good as it's hyped up to be. All of the years of seeing the cover of the album on T-shirts and people talking about it, and and then I gave it a listen, and I have to say, it not only lives up to the hype, but it actually exceeded it for me. It is really, as a concept album, as a song cycle, whatever you want to call it, it's almost like this euphoric experience where you have these amazing songs, these rock, these art rock songs that have these amazing instrumentation and have a cinematic score like quality, sort of bleeding together into each song leads into one another so fluently that it comes off as almost one massive song. I had to look down at certain points and see that, oh, it's moved on to the next song. It's not the same. The transition was that seamless, and it was great. I mentioned the word euphoria in connection with the listening, and it really was like that. It was like this amazing awakening for me where I just thought, this is just wonderful. And to know that Pink Floyd accomplished that in 1973, when there was things were considerably less connected than today, in terms of now there's 15 people writing the most popular songs, but to know that they managed to accomplish that, and the people producing that album were able to put it together in such a way, I thought it was marvelous. A great listen, to be sure, even in 2025, 52 years after its release, and I would highly recommend it. And then, actually, yesterday, for the first time, I listened to the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. And again, it was a great listen. There's songs in there like Sloop John B, God Only Knows, which, everyone's familiar with, but some of the other songs that perhaps weren't as known, and to maybe modern listeners who haven't listened to the full album, for me, I thought Wouldn't It Be Nice was excellent. I thought Caroline No was great. All of these on the first half of the album, You Still Believe in Me, That's Not Me, and so on, they were excellent. And I think it just speaks to the power of the album as a means of artistic expression, right? You have not just the effect of the individual songs, but the collective effect of the amalgamation that made them great. It accentuates the effect that the album is supposed to have. So I think that was great, and I certainly look forward to exploring more in the way of the classic full album experience for other famous albums in the future. So that was great. And what else has been going on? What really, it's been getting into summer season, and it's in the midst of kind of one of my favorite times of the year, which is NBA playoffs. It's also NHL playoffs, which there's been some pretty interesting stuff happening there, but I'm not as much of a hockey guy, I admit. Really, the peak of my hockey interest was when the local favorites, the Chicago Blackhawks, were this unbelievable dynasty in the early 2010s when I was growing up in the Chicago area. So that was great at the time, but really it's been all basketball all the time for me. And yesterday I actually saw a great game. In a way, it wasn't a great game. It wasn't especially competitive. It was the Game 7 of the Denver Nuggets versus the Los Angeles Clippers, to cap off the first round for the West. And it was, sort of this huge drubbing by the Nuggets. People like Christian Braun were great, Aaron Gordon. Christian Braun actually had a great alley-oop to Aaron Gordon in the third quarter that really just sort of exemplified everything that went on that game. That was when they were already leading by a lot. And, to be in Ball Arena in Denver, I'm sure when that happened, must have been electric, just the atmosphere of what was going on there. But yeah, the NBA playoffs, they've been good. There's been a couple good series. Everyone's uh, excited about the Pistons, and of course now they've lost to the Knicks in the first round. But it really looked like they had a decent chance of winning. Each game was very close, and just such a turnaround from the Pistons, right? They had an almost historically bad season last year where they lost those 28 straight games and were, sort of a laughing stock. People overseas were saying that, that some of the Chinese teams could probably have beaten them. Who knows if that's true or not, or if that was just talk. But, it says a lot that people were even willing to go out on a limb and say things like that. And here they are, the Cade Cunningham having made huge strides. Some of the pickups they made really improving the team, and it's really great to see. I think the Pistons really deserve to be a great NBA team. That franchise has got such history behind it, whether it be the bad boy Pistons of the 80s with Isaiah Thomas and Bill Laimbeer and Joe Dumars and of course Dennis Rodman and all those people, in the late 80s and such, and into the early to sort of mid to late 2000s Pistons teams with the Wallaces and Chauncey Billups. It's a history. It's a historically renowned and revered franchise. So it's great to see them making strides. And it's great that Detroit sports have been looking up lately as much as they have been, right? You have the Tigers who are leading their division and who made a very impressive run last year to the ALDS. They actually almost won against the Guardians and came up just short, but that would have that was great to watch, and really pointed to a great future. It is such a young team after all. And the Lions have been so great for the past couple seasons. They didn't perform up to people's expectations in the playoffs this year, but that there's certainly a future for them in the NFL, or at least one would hope so. I suppose things are very unpredictable with injuries and such, but you would hope that things would look up for them. But yeah, so it's been interesting to watch, the NBA, and here's hoping that there's some great series coming up. The Knicks and the Celtics are playing soon, so that'll be interesting to watch. It's always fun when two big franchises, two big markets go head to head. Certainly, that's an almost regional rivalry, right? With Boston and New York being close to one another, and things like the Yankees Red Sox rivalry. So that'll be fun. And then I mean, you talk about Denver winning last night. So now they're going to play Oklahoma City, and that'll be super interesting because we're going to really get to see the comparison between Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Nikola Jokic. The two predominant MVP candidates this season. People are really going to get to see one possibly stake a claim over the other. Who really is better. In spite of the fact that they're really such different players. I mean, honestly, I don't think anyone in history is really like Jokic. He's his own beast, but so is Shai in a lot of ways. So that'll be interesting. What else is going on this weekend? Well, today is May the 4th, and as such, it is Star Wars Day. So it's been interesting. Revenge of the Sith actually came back to theaters recently for its 20th anniversary, and my cousin and I went and saw it. My cousin, she's actually, I learned recently, she's actually kind of a huge fan of Revenge of the Sith. We were watching scenes on YouTube of it, and she was like totally knew every quote and was, scene by scene quoting verbatim. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was pretty impressed. I didn't think anyone was that dedicated to the prequels, being as maligned as they are. But we went and saw it, and for me, it still certainly has a lot of problems. I definitely wouldn't call it a great movie by any means, but seeing it with my cousin and seeing her excitement to it, and heck, just seeing it on the big screen, when I previously didn't have the opportunity to, was really a treat. And I mean, I just like going to the movies in general. I'm almost never going to have, a bad time at the movies. Being the movie buff that I am, I always, enjoy myself. So there was that. It's actually interesting because now we're getting to the point where we're really in the full swing of summer movies and things are coming out. Notably, in the next couple weeks, Final Destination Bloodlines is coming out, and I recently watched. I had seen every Final Destination movie except for two, and I finally watched that a few weeks ago. It might have actually just been last week, really, that I finally got that in the bag, and I just love those movies so much. I think the cleverness with the ways they find to kill people off. It's almost this Rube Goldberg effect of things being set up, and then the tiniest little detail contributes to the way people die. And it's a great premise for a slasher series, entirely unique as well, where it's death's grand design that is the true villain. And that's sort of a scary thing that's like, well, how do I fight that? It's we're fighting against forces that are beyond our human understanding, our earthly realm of existence. So that'll be good. And then the new Mission Impossible coming out, which that'll be fun. Those tend to be enjoyable, I've found, and really is the harbinger of summer. I think of whenever it's the new Mission Impossibles come out, it's like, okay, summer is here. We're getting the summer action blockbusters. So those are very entertaining. And yeah, it's been it's been good. There's been the movies. There's been sports. I've been very much looking forward to something that's really kind of been, I guess, for the past year or two, been teased, and I've been extremely excited for, is a new book, Lusitania, an illustrated biography. And it's come out in 2 volumes. So anyone who knows me will know that I'm a big fan of ocean liner history. I love the sinking of the Titanic, from a history nerd perspective, right? I love learning about it. And the Lusitania is almost as famous, having been torpedoed in May of 1915 with heavy loss of life. And it really created a lot of tensions between the U.S. and Germany. And America didn't enter the war until 2 years after, but it certainly didn't help their case, against Germany in terms of the public perception of them, right? But yeah, so this new book is coming out. It's written by some very good people that have done a lot of great work in not just the Lusitania angle, but You have people like Tad Fitch and J. Kent Layton, who are some of the co-authors, and they were co-authors along with Bill Wormstead of On a Sea of Glass, The Life and Loss of the RMS Titanic, which that's probably the best, or at least one of the best Titanic books that's come out really ever. I think it's extremely comprehensive and a great read, full of great research and, little factoids that you wouldn't otherwise know about. It's almost like a Titanic enthusiast Bible, some would say. And so a lot of people are, that have gotten advanced copies of this Lusitania book, which is now the second volume, and focuses on the later voyages and sinking of. They're saying, oh, this is totally given Lusitania the On a Sea of Glass treatment. So that's very exciting. Yeah, I actually just saw a Facebook post from J. Kent Layton, who I mentioned before. He's saying that they just got the copies and they're going to send out some of the signed copies, which I ordered because I figured, well, why not? I have such high regard for these guys. I'd really like a signed copy more than anything. Yeah, I was actually hoping to get the book by now so I could review it for this podcast, but alas, it wasn't quite soon enough. I have been trying to read. There's a book actually that I just, well, not just a couple weeks ago started, and it's been very on and off for my reading habits, but I'm slowly getting through. It's Wired, The Short Life and Fast Times of John Belushi by Bob Woodward. Great book so far. I mean, you want to talk about someone who is extremely interesting and so talented and such a tragic figure. He had such an addiction to drugs and just pleasure in general. I mean, he really overdid it, and he died so young as a result of it, and so tragically. But the book really, the book was published a few years after his death, so it's very, contemporary research, all the interviews that Bob Woodward did, of course, being such a legendary journalist. It's been very interesting to read. I really gotta get on that. I gotta finish that one up so I can start reading the Lusitania book when it comes out. Yeah, it's been a chill past couple of weeks. A lot of, as you can probably tell, a lot of sitting around, a lot of, lazy activity. You know, with the exception of, school and work. I mean, it's been a lot of, I've been listening to my music, I've been reading, I've been watching basketball. Lazy summer activity, to be sure. But I absolutely love it. And it's really a lot of stuff to look forward to for me. I've got in the next couple months a family reunion coming up. So there's that to look forward to. There's I don't know. There's a lot of fun stuff going on, and this podcast that if anyone's gotten to this point, miraculously have been listening to, this represents the final project of a journalism class that I have, and it's really very experimental, as you can tell. I'm sort of gaining my footing as far as the whole podcast and orating thing goes, right? I really, in lieu of having a graceful way of signing off here, getting to the 30-minute mark, I guess I'd like to say thank you to anyone who listened to this. Thank you to anyone who, I don't know, I guess listening is good enough, right? I mean, there's no expectation to find it good or anything like that, but we'll certainly see how it goes, as far as my listening back to this, and whether even the microphone I'm speaking into is good or not. I have suspicions that it may not be up to task in a lot of ways. So we'll see. But until next time, if there is a next time, I wish you all the best of luck in life, the best night you can possibly have, and to take care. Thank you.